It's running now.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Portsmouth City Council Housing and Social Care Scrutiny Panel. My name's Cal Corkery. I'm one of the councillors on the panel, and I will be chairing the meeting today. This is a live meeting, so members of the public have been invited to view this meeting, and there may well be a handful of people at least watching online, and will also be available to watch back as a recording. Those present within the virtual meeting, are asked to keep their microphones on mute and only turn them on when speaking. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand, or you can use the chat to write your name followed by RTS, which stands for request to speak. Please don't use the chat for anything else, just to stop it getting clogged up. Please use the chat on the right hand side of the screen, not the chat icon on the left. Each time you speak, please say who you are so it's clear who is speaking. If there are any technical difficulties, hopefully there's not, but if there are, then we'll try to resolve these where necessary and have a brief adjournment that the meeting can proceed where correct. I'm just going to go through now and do a bit of a roll call just to confirm exactly who we've got here. I think most of the people are here, but I'll just double check. So first on my list is Councillor Stuart Brown.
Good morning.
Hello, Stuart. Morning. And Councillor Linda Symes.
Good morning.
Okay. Got Colin Gallagher. So apologies if I pronounced that wrong, from Adbury.
Good morning.
And also Ralph Facey from Adbury.
Good morning, everyone.
Got Andrew Godwin from Guinness.
Good morning, everyone.
On it. And also Richard King from Guinness.
Good morning.
Adele Lees from Sanctuary.
Morning.
And got on here Caroline Munns from Vivid.
I think she might or might not be able to attend, but
Okay. Not with us yet. That's fine. Also got Steve Groves, PCC.
Yep, morning.
Morning, Steve. And has Meredith, yes, Meredith has joined us. Meredith Hughes from PCC as well.
Good morning, everyone.
Meredith. And we've also got Anna Martin.
Democratic Services.
Thank you, Anna. Anna's here just to kind of help us run the meeting and hopefully ensure we do everything we need to. Okay, we've also, I'm just checking who else we've got on the call. So I know Janine, you come from resident engagement at the council.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Okay. So I think we've covered everyone. Is there anyone who hasn't? Haven't covered? No, okay, perfect. So we'll move on now to the formal agenda, just to run through. We've got a few formalities to get through at the start. Should take us a couple of minutes and then we can get cracking with the main discussion. So firstly, any apologies for absence? I know that Jeff Hallsby, who's a sanctuary tenant that I think attended our previous meeting, said that he may be able to join later, but wasn't able to make the start of the meeting. Have there been any other apologies received, Anna?
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. In that case, we can move on to declarations of interest. So this is where the councillors on the call have the opportunity to declare anything that is of particular interest, that may be a conflict or something they need to disclose. I can kick us off just to disclose that I've got a personal interest in this topic as I am a Portsmouth City Council tenant. Are there any other interests that need to be declared?
No interest.
No interest from me, thank you.
Thank you. In that case, we can move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 25th of November 2021. We need to ensure that these are a correct record of the meeting held on that date. Are people happy to confirm those as a correct record? Yeah, let's see a nod from Stuart and Linda. Okay, thank you very much. Brilliant. So yeah, I'll now approve those as a correct record of the meeting. Right, so now to move on to the main part of the discussion today. So this scrutiny panel, and the way in which scrutiny panels work on the council, and I'm sure on other councils, is that a particular topic is chosen to try and delve into a little bit more detail around, and we kind of invite residents, professionals, services to come and submit evidence and also take questions from the councillors who are on the panel, so we can get a better understanding of exactly if there are any issues around that topic, and then if there is kind of best practice that can be learned or any recommendations that we need to take forward to try and improve the services that local residents are receiving. So this scrutiny panel made the decision at some point last year to look at how social housing repairs and maintenance services, and in particular kind of focus on more of the day-to-day aspects around that. So less of the kind of long-term planned maintenance schemes, so the repainting of a block, for example, and more about if a resident has something wrong with their home or their block that they need to report, and it needs to be dealt with kind of in the short term. So, for example, a leaky tap or an issue, a broken kitchen, for example, something that needs repair kind of there and then, or at least within the next couple of weeks or month. So that is what we did, and the first thing we did was put out a survey to all social housing tenants that live within Portsmouth. So that was open to people who live in housing association properties and Portsmouth City Council properties. Within Portsmouth, Portsmouth City Council is the largest social landlord. It's got quite a significant number of properties itself, but there are also a significant minority of social housing tenants who live in housing association properties. And I think we've probably got the largest ones with properties within Portsmouth here today, so that's good. And we'll hopefully be able to kind of put questions and hear comments from yourselves later on. Following the survey, we invited people who had responded to the survey, as well as some other tenants that were involved in Portsmouth City Council kind of processes, along to a meeting of this scrutiny panel, where we held a discussion. It was a relatively open discussion, but those of us that were on the panel were able to kind of delve down into some specific issues and try and draw out where there were potentially kind of issues or questions that would be useful for us to take forward and put to yourselves today. So we had quite a good representation there, had a number of council tenants and a number of housing association tenants as well. Probably important to say also is that we were quite keen to emphasise that this wasn't necessarily about only feeding back where things have gone wrong. We were keen to hear kind of good and bad feedback, so that where there are things that are being done well by particular landlords or particular services, we can try and draw out some of that best practice and those lessons learned to put into the final report to try and ensure that we're kind of driving up standards across the board, really, so that every social housing tenant in Portsmouth is receiving a consistent and a good quality service, which of course is exactly what they all deserve, and I'm sure exactly what everyone here today would agree that they deserve. So I think probably now we can kick off with questions. I think what it might be useful to do, Councillors Simons and Brown, is if we take it in turns to ask a question, or maybe a kind of number of questions grouped around a particular theme, and then if we go round the various landlords present and allow them to kind of introduce or to comment or kind of respond to that question. I thought just before we jump into that, actually, just jump back a step, I thought it might be useful just to go round. I know we did very brief introductions at the start, but just to go round and get people to introduce themselves and their role, and maybe a very brief summary, kind of, I guess, up to 5 minutes, we'll say, for each landlord. So where there's a couple of people present for a particular landlord, if you could try and decide between yourselves who will do this. But it'd be useful, I think, for us just to get a summary of how you think your repairs and maintenance service operates, and also, yeah, how you would kind of summarise it being run. And I guess I'm looking for kind of key headline aspects. Like, for example, is it run in-house, or do you kind of mainly use external contractors? Those kind of key issues. So yeah, if we could start by going round, I'll go round in the order that we did earlier. So first on my list was Abbury. I know we've got both Colin and Ralph here. If one of you could maybe kind of introduce yourselves and Abbury and just give us, yeah, a kind of a couple of minutes summary of how the repairs and maintenance service operates. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. My name's Ralph Facey. I'm the Exec Director of Operations. Proud to be a resident of the city. To give you some background to our stock, we have 972 homes in the city, most of which are in blocks, so 65 blocks of flats, covering most areas of the council's operating area. In terms of our year, it's probably the last year has been for all of us the most challenging we've faced in recent times with COVID, resourcing and material shortages. But there's been some good news certainly over the last quarter with our recruitment strategies and our response. So by way of a headline, before I hand over to Colin, just to give you some of the things that we're doing at the moment in response, 2,242 repairs were completed in the last 6 months, and that's at a cost of £262,000. 72% of those were routine, and our average response time was 36 days, which is not where we would wish it to be, but it is improving. So that's the average, including emergency and routine. Colin, would you like to take us through some of the steps we're taking to get extra resources in and to recruit people from the city to look after our homes?
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. My name's Colin Gallagher. I'm the Commercial Director for ABRI. So I manage and lead the direct labour team that we have in place. Predominantly 80% of all the works that we carry out are by our own trades, so we recruit our own trades to do that. We outsource occasional jobs when we got recruitment issues or we're actually reduced level of resources, but predominantly we focus very much on doing it directly labour organisation to actually carry out the repairs that we do. We've got about dedicated within the Portsmouth area, we have about 12 trades, including supervisors as well, that actually support the 900 properties that we have in that area. And again, obviously we can drop in with additional resources if we need to from that aspect. And we also got 2 gas engineers that are typically going across all the properties doing the gas servicing and the maintenance. The challenges that Ralph has mentioned, absolutely that's not unique to us. That's covered the whole of the UK wide, specifically in social housing, which has been Brexit, which has been fuel crisis, which has recently been Storm Eunice, which other housing associations would have come across the issues related to fences falling down, roofs coming off. So we've worked quite challenging times over the last year. And again, that's within ABRI as well. We've also experienced high levels of churn rate with resources, obviously in trades deciding to move and work in the London area since COVID started. The impact of COVID is reduced. That's caused us to recruit significantly, and we've done that over the last 6 to 7 months. We've recruited an additional 100 resources to cover all of ABRI in the south, not least the Portsmouth area and Havant, and Waterlooville, Lovedene and East Hampshire area as well. Again, it's a bit of a blended approach as well, because we've also improved our processes, how we deal and address with damp and mould issues. We've improved our approach to actually how we do that and undertake repairs for damp and mould issues. Other areas which we're also doing, which Ralph didn't mention, but we are starting to do a stock condition survey of all of our properties within the Portsmouth area in the next few months, and that will be a physical stock condition survey. The back of that will then inform our investment profile for actually how we repair it, because ultimately, I know you mentioned it earlier at the start of the meeting, this isn't focused on planned works, but planned works is the key to actually reduce the level of response repairs. So we're very much looking at increasing the volume of planned works that we do and the investment there, because that will have a consequence of reducing the level of response repairs that we need to do. And I think during COVID, of course, during that year, it was a very fragmented approach that we had to do, not just ABRI, but other housing associations where it was broken up with furlough, you couldn't work for 3 months. So again, that caused a big issue with regard to the investment profile that we could do. So again, we're looking at revamping that one up going into the next few months. And that's it from me.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Over 5 minutes.
Thank you. So yeah, if we now move over and get the same kind of introduction and overall summary from Guinness.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Andrew Godwin. I'm the head of service for Guinness Property, operating along the south coast. I'd just like to echo what both Colin and Ralph have said. These have been very, very trying times, and you know, it's gone back the best part of 18 months to 2 years now where we've seen the marketplace change considerably. Like ABRI, we've had issues with recruitment. However, we've looked at our structure now. We employ around about 500 trades across the country, and we're currently in the process of appointing 20% more trades across the country, because we obviously have issues with absence, sickness, and also to over recruit, because it's a very tough market at the moment. One of the reasons we're over recruiting is because of the issues we find around subcontractor performance, and also the cost with subcontractors. The marketplace has changed dramatically, whereas once we were probably in a better place to dictate costs and control of subcontractors. Where the market now is, there's just an abundance of work out there. We're finding rates are going up, and subcontractors are moving from local authority to housing association, and they're basically getting the highest rate. So to combat that, we're over recruiting our directly employed staff. The majority of our responsive repairs are delivered directly, and that's something that we're going to continue to do. We are also looking at the overall structure of our repairs facility and how we deliver maintenance to our customers. So we're giving more responsibility to our service managers, who have more contact with our customers, to actually assess and dictate what repairs are required at the time, rather than multiple visits from surveyors. They can just move the job along and get the works acted upon a lot quicker. Coupled with this, we're putting in together a dedicated disrepair team, so we can focus on any disrepair and make sure that that's actioned very, very swiftly. But I think, like Colin and Ralph said, we've never seen, well, I've never seen a period like this in the last 20 years. We've all made decisions. Our executive teams have made decisions on what repairs we would take during the pandemic, such as emergencies only. We've continued to raise repairs, and ultimately that's generated quite a bow wave. So we've been in a process of catch up, I would say, for the last, I don't know, 6 to 9 months, and we're still catching up. One of our concerns at Guinness is the recruitment of new trade staff, because we do find trades are now jumping from organisation to organisation, which is a challenge for us. So at Guinness, what we've done is we've gone out to the marketplace, we've realigned our rates for trades and inflated them somewhat, so we can keep that level of retention. And we're seeing that, actually. We brought that in at the beginning of January, because the key to delivering our repair service is actually having boots on the ground. So we're going to continue to focus on that. I imagine Portsmouth City Council have got the same issues recruiting and retaining staff. So this is something I think every organisation on the South Coast is focusing on at the moment, because we do have a limited amount of trades out there. And the rates are going up exponentially at the moment, not just with subcontractors, but with trades themselves. So we're having to make sure we follow that trend, and it does cost us more money, but it's the only way to keep a service continuous. Currently, our average end-to-end times for the Portsmouth area are 26.4 days. For the PO codes we have there, we've got about 108 jobs outstanding on our WIP. This is from the backlog that's come forwards, and on average our customer satisfaction for the area is about 82%. We expect that to increase dramatically over the coming months, with more people on the ground, a greater focus on delivering repairs and speeding up response times. But it is a very, very challenging environment, and we're having to move quickly so our customers don't pay the price.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Okay, moving on, next on my list was Sanctuary, which I believe is Adele.
Morning, everybody. Yeah, my name's Adele Lees. I'm an area manager for housing, so I feel slightly at a disadvantage here that my predecessors that have spoken have obviously got more knowledge of the repair service. So I have got some statistics, but I think it's very similar to what the other providers are experiencing as well. So we've had obviously issues during lockdown that we've got some work outstanding from that. We've also had issues getting materials in order to carry out repairs. Overall, though, looking at the statistics that we've got, because we've only got 129 properties, I should say, so we're quite small in the city. Overall, in the last 12 months, I've got some stats here that show that our targets for routine jobs, we're doing it within 23.7 days. That's within our target. And equally for our emergency repairs, which we do within 24 hours, we did 23.4 hours as an average over the past 12 months. Currently, we've got 61 overdue routine jobs as at, I think it was Monday the report was written, and of those 18 are overdue, so that's about 30%. So obviously the situation has gone downhill ever so slightly in the last couple of weeks. Just picking up on something that the other provider said, I think it was Guinness that mentioned the damp and mould team. That's something we've done as an organisation already that we introduced back in October last year. So we've now got a dedicated team focusing on damp, mould condensation, and that's been really successful so far, but it's still very much early days. I think the other thing to say is we did look at the statistics for satisfaction, because I think there's some things that the survey looked at in particular. I couldn't drill down to Portsmouth only, I'm afraid, but overall in the southwest, the feedback that I got is 95.9% of customers said they were satisfied that staff were competent and knowledgeable, and 91.3% felt that staff treated them as a valued customer. I think the other thing I'd say is probably similar to other providers as well, in terms of the in-house versus external contractors. We've also got an in-house service. I'd say pre-COVID, we were doing 95% of our repairs in-house. I don't have the statistics to say what that is at the moment, but I know that we're using external contractors more in the last 12 months than we had done previously, but I don't have the percentage to say what that is, I'm afraid. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adele. I'm just double checking, and maybe Anna, you can let me know if we have had anyone from Vivid join since the start of the meeting.
Let's check the participant. No, there isn't here. I think they only said they might be able to come. It wasn't confirmed. But...
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Okay, so if we move on, ask either Steve or Meredith to give a similar kind of introduction and overview of the Portsmouth City Council services, please.
Yeah. Morning, I'm Steve Groves. I'm Head of Building Maintenance for Portsmouth City Council. Just a bit of context. Obviously, we are probably the largest. We are the largest provider in the area. So we've got just under 15,000 properties in the Portsmouth area, plus about 1,900 leaseholders. In terms of our stock, predominantly built 50s and 60s, most of it, and a whole range of properties that we've got. In terms of the repair service, probably a little bit more different to the house associations. We don't have category times. Residents can phone up for a repair, and we try to meet whatever what is convenient for them for that repair to be done. So we don't have any categories for completions, and we try to offer that we can make appointments that are convenient with the resident. So that's probably something that's probably fairly unique for us in the area in terms of how we do the repair service. In terms of delivery of repairs, we use external contractors for our repair service, and those contractors are all local contractors. So we have three main contractors for our housing repairs, one covering the on-island area and one covering the off-island area, because obviously we've also got properties in the Havant area. And then we've got a gas contractor, and those contracts are using the NEC contract, cost reimbursable, open book contract arrangements. So because we haven't got we haven't got the standard sort of KPIs that a lot of people would use, but we do use a range of measures to understand how the service is being delivered. And I guess just picking out one of the ones that people have talked about, but for all of our repairs, I think the end-to-end time is around sort of 25 days at the moment, but that's for everything, so we don't have any categories for that. Similar to everybody else, probably customer satisfaction is obviously a key area for us. So we do it with a range, a score out of 10. So our customer satisfaction is regularly above 9 out of 10. But the focus for us is probably around sort of where the sort of feedback is. So, you know, we're doing quite a lot of work at the moment to look at how we capture that customer satisfaction. And we're picking up where the areas of focus need to be. And certainly we get positive stuff as well. So we learn from that. So certainly contact with the council, quality of repairs, booking appointments is very positive from the customer satisfaction. Areas where we need to look to improve our contractor communication and understand those sort of more complex repairs. And we're certainly doing a lot of work to look at how we can engage with residents better and provide that service to residents, how they contact us and how contractors keep them informed, particularly on those sort of more complex sort of repairs. And we've certainly looking at how we keep residents informed when we sign them up to new properties and sort of giving them out leaflets and information that can help them to access the repair service. And then similar really to everybody else, really, that, you know, it has been challenging. We did maintain a normal service throughout the whole pandemic. We didn't stop the service at all. So we did deliver the same service. Obviously, some of those repairs may have taken longer because of access issues. But generally, we were offering the same service all the way through the pandemic. But the biggest challenges, as everybody else on the screen has said, is about recruitment and retention of staff for our contractors. And that is an area that we're doing a very similar exercise to, it sounds like some of the others are doing, in terms of the contractors. We're working with them to review the terms and conditions. It's a very competitive market, and I think, you know, certainly in the discussions that we've had with contractors, they've said that particularly at this time, they're struggling. They're losing people that they thought they would never lose. Typically, it's been a very stable sort of workforce for those contractors. They may have changed names over the years, but it's been a fairly stable sort of workforce. But the last sort of 6 months or so, they've seen that very much change, and it's been very difficult retaining staff, but also then going out into the market and recruiting new staff. I think that was it from me. Meredith, was there anything else you wanted to add at all to that?
No, I think the only thing I'd add is that I think Ralph, Colin and Andrew mentioned it previously, was that, you know, both Steve and myself have been in the industry for a significant time. We've never known, probably over the last 4 or 5 years, never known the industry in the situation it is at the moment. And obviously over the last 18 months, the pressures around labour, materials, uncertainty with fuel prices, energy costs, etc., and obviously what's happening in Ukraine at the moment, you know, the knock-on effects of that won't be felt for a significant period. You know, and that'll work itself through the system. And I think we're only now seeing, I know we're talking about repairs at the moment, but certainly on things like our planned work, it's only now really that we're seeing the full effect of Brexit and COVID, etc., on tenders and contract work that we're letting, which is, you know, significantly more than pre-COVID, but also during 2020 when we were managing to do work as well. So, you know, incredible pressures on the construction industry, and I think we're all in the same boat, facing the same pressures around resources, materials, and that uncertainty over cost and building cost inflation over the next year, 18 months, 3 years, etc. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, so I believe we've now give all the different organisations a chance to kind of introduce and summarise their work. What I'm now going to do is open it up to the panel. I've got a few questions myself, but I will save them so I don't take all the good ones, and I'll give Councillor Brown and Councillor Symes the opportunity to come in and ask questions of the people we've got before us today. What I would say, Councillor Simons and Brown, is that I know we had some questions and issues raised with regards to specific landlords and specific blocks. I think it would be useful to start with the more general questions about kind of policies and processes, and then maybe towards the end of the meeting we can take the opportunity to ask some of those specific questions that residents have brought up with us, if that's okay. Okay, so I'll start with Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. So I suppose the first thing I was hoping to ask for a bit more detail on would be if, for all the landlords, if a resident isn't happy with the speed or the quality of the repairs that have been carried out at their property, what sort of procedures would you have in place to address that complaint and, obviously, most importantly, make right the repair?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Brown. I'll just add a little bit to that, just because obviously we probably haven't got a massive amount of time to ask a whole load of questions and go around everyone. So I'll just kind of supplement that, if that's okay, and then we'll do a bit of a round robin to get the comment on it. So obviously there, I think that's a point well made about how people can raise concerns when they're not happy about or they want to kind of feedback about service. So that almost the kind of complaints and compliments side there. I'd also kind of maybe add into that just a question about resident voice. So we know out the back of Grenfell and a lot of the legislative changes that are coming forwards, this is going to be something that social landlords have to do a more around. There's going to be more obligations on them to kind of promote and hear the resident voice. So maybe if we could hear any comments you've got on that as well, or what the plans of your organisation might be. So yeah, kind of two parts almost, about the complaints and compliments, and then also about resident voice and how residents are listened to as part of the service. So if we do, say we'll kind of do a round robin essentially. If we go around in the same order that we did earlier, starting off with Abri, please.
Okay, so yeah, really good question. I think what we've tried to do, I think in all cases, Councillor Brown, would be primarily just to focus on not letting it go to a complaint stage. So what we very much want to do, if a resident rang up on any one of our properties, they'll talk to our call agents. Our call agents are empowered then to pick that up and just look into it and identify what the issues are. If it's down to contractors or materials, they can explain to the resident effectively, well, it's because of A, B, C or D, because we'll obviously maintain the job record on the system. Our systems would tell us. So what we try to do very much is obviously improve our first point of contact, so it actually doesn't need to go to a complaint for the resident as well, because the resident primarily wants an answer and when is it going to be fixed. So that's what we want to actually do that. If we do find that it is something that we can do and we can bring forward because it's an emergency or it's an urgent issue or something has changed for the resident, then absolutely the call agents are empowered to just prioritise repairs, and then they can actually allocate the resources through our diary management system to actually appoint a trade to go out and attend to a repair, obviously in line with agreement with the resident at the same time as well. If the resident isn't happy or isn't comfortable actually with that process, then absolutely then we would then provide opportunities for the resident to go through our complaint stage. And on that back of that one, then we'll take details of that one and we'll then progress that through our complaints team to actually go forward with it. But throughout that whole process, very much it'll be a constant dialogue. I mean, for us at the end of the day and for the resident is to try and minimise disruption, minimise frustration as well for the resident, and very much achieve what the resident absolutely wants is a repair and actually be done as quick as possible. So very much we would look at that as well, in line with the challenges that we have in place. And if we don't have the resources available, then again, I think we've discussed as well, we'd then look at availability of our supply chain to do the repair as well. So we've got other opportunities and levers that we can actually pull on to ensure that it doesn't reach the point of a complaint, which, to be fair, to a certain extent, we probably still want to actually ensure that the repair is done quick as soon as possible. I think for related to the voice of the customer process, which we currently have within the organisation, I think Ralph can probably pick that one up. Ralph.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you for the question, Councillor. In light of the emerging consumer standard and obviously the tragedy of Grenfell, it's important we do better at hearing our customers' voice. During the pandemic, we launched a community investment strategy, which is around employment, empowerment and health and well-being, and lots of activities in places like Lamport and in the South Sea and a whole range of areas in the city to improve the way that we engage. But going forward, it's important that we go further and have a local voice for local areas. So our teams will be developing local panels, will be listening better, and then our resident scrutiny group will be looking at the outcomes and making sure that people have a direct route through to our organisation. A couple of initiatives to come. There will be web chats similar to this with our customer base to enable people to express their views and respond, and we'll be in our communities supporting grassroots organisations to come through and champion the voice of the resident. But in short, lots of work to do in our new housing services strategy, which launches mid-March, will be the way that we take it forward, and local service will matter to our organisation. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you both very much. If we could move on now, the same question to Guinness, please.
Thank you. As you can imagine, our processes across every organisation have a lot of similarities. So I won't go over everything, but we, as Colin mentioned, how we approach a complaint is very, very similar to ABRI. What we do in addition is a lot of transactional surveys. So when a repair has been done, we make calls very, very swiftly to pick up if there is any outstanding issues, or possibly something that's going to turn into a complaint where we haven't provided the service expected. We are changing our structure significantly because we find our service managers who work directly on the repair side with the trades who actually deliver the repair has a great deal more contact with our customer rather than the surveyor. So we're increasing the number of service managers to improve that level of contact with our customers. What we have found and what experience has shown us, it is generally the more complicated or larger repair that we fail to keep our customer up to date with. And so it's probably something that a lot of organisations experience. But this is an area that we're predominantly focusing on at the moment, because when we've analysed our customer feedback and our customer surveys, a lot of it that has come back to us generally sits around the communication on larger jobs with our customer. When somebody is coming, what is the next stage in the process? So our focus is going to be around that over the next 3 months, and the structure that we have designed supports that approach to support the customer. With our transactional surveys, if there is a query or a comment, then that customer will get a call back from a service manager or from an operational support manager to find out exactly what the issue is. Have we underperformed? Did we miss something? Or is it just generally, could we have done it better? Or sometimes, what a fantastic job and what a nice person that come out and carried out the repair. But it's important that we keep that level of communication active at all times with our customers. As far as resident involvement goes, it's very similar to what Ralph has spoken about. It involves resident groups. However, my concern is generally resident groups sit around blocks or higher density number of units. So for us, it's focusing on those units that are more scattered as well, so our residents' voice is complete. So that's another area we are looking at.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if I could ask the same question of Sanctuary, please, Adele.
Thank you. Again, very similar. So obviously we have a formal complaints process, but what we try and do is resolve it before it reaches that stage. So we have something called Frontline Resolution, and that applies to our repair service, but also our housing service as well. And if a customer isn't happy, whether that's about a repair or something we've done not doing an estate inspection, we will actually work with that customer to see what they're looking for us to do, to see if we can accommodate that, and we'll do that across the board, across all our services. But we do have a formal complaints process as well. So if a customer's still unhappy at the end of that process, frontline resolution, they're free to do that. Just picking up specifically about the repair side of things, because we are a larger organisation, I think it was ABRI that said that you're able to prioritise emergencies, etc. What we've got in addition to that is we have very specific teams within our repairs team who answer the calls, who kind of prioritise works, and we've got teams that will look at individual resident circumstances. So we have a wellbeing team, and if a customer is vulnerable in some way, it actually gets managed proactively by that team, so that we're being very careful to make sure that if someone's got a disability, etc., that we're actually monitoring the progress of that particular repair. We also have an incident team that do scheme-wide or blocks of. So if there was a lift breakdown in a block, that is also monitored on a daily basis by a team as well. So we're very proactive in trying to make sure that we're dealing with those kind of priority repairs in a sensible way. With regards to kind of the resident voice, at the moment we have a national resident scrutiny panel, so they get involved in decision making at all levels. However, obviously in light of the white paper, we are currently reviewing what we're doing, and managers more senior than me are giving that serious consideration. I think that's all I can say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. And if we could get either Steve or Meredith to answer from PCC.
Yeah, so again, very similar to the other house associations, really. Certainly, we would like to be accessible, that it doesn't get to a formal stage, and certainly one of the things that we do is we do regularly do demand analysis to understand what are the calls that are coming into the call centre, and are they value or are they failure calls, and certainly that gives us an early indication about the system and how the system's performing. So, for instance, some of the highest failures is somebody perhaps contractors didn't turn up. So that's an area of focus for us. And again, there's similar sort of communication sort of issues that were talked about previously around certainly the more sort of complex jobs. So we're finding some of that from the demand analysis, but also complementing that with doing a customer satisfaction survey so that we can try and understand any systematic issues that we can address, and not just focusing on those individual items, although obviously we want to fix those as well. In terms of the formal complaints, we have a two-stage complaints process. The first stage would be investigated by one of the management team, and then if that went to the second stage, that would come to me as the head of a service, and then obviously residents have the option to go to an ombudsman if they wanted to follow that through. Not many come to me, and we do again, we try to use complaints again to try and learn from. So it's not just about fixing the complaint, but we do try to review the complaints, what they're about, so that we can again see if there's any systematic issues that we need to address, or is there any common themes that are coming out of those sort of complaints. In terms of the resident voice aspect of the question, we in Portsmouth we have a resident consortium that we can go to, but alongside that, we again, similar to some of the comments earlier, that we recognise that we want to try and get to as many residents as we can to talk about repairs, and we have set up a resident group across the all areas, not linked to a block, but have got a particular interest in repairs. So if we are then consulting on various aspects of the repair service, we can access people that are interested in that, and it doesn't have to always be a resident meeting. It could just be the resident engagement team emailing information to them, and getting their views, or phoning them up, and actually Janine, who's on the call as well, is part of that resident engagement team and has helped set that up. And I can't recall how many people we got offhand in that group, but again, it's trying to get a bigger, as wide a range of residents that we can consult with about anything that we want to do, get their feedback about the repair service, and also for us to be able to consult with them about different things that we want to bring in. I think that's it from me.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, I think we've gone around and had an answer to that question. Can I ask Councillor Symes if you've got a question you'd like to ask?
Yes, I'm quite concerned. There seems to be a complaint procedure, but what happens when you have repeat repairs to a bathroom or anywhere in someone's house, that has been repeated several times with no real resolution. You know, what is the scope for somebody to actually resolve that? Because, you know, there are sometimes things where a repair doesn't work, but when it doesn't work 3 or 4 times, what's your strategy then? What do you do to ameliorate that situation?
Thank you, Councillor Symes. Both of those questions that I've already asked were questions that were on my list, so it's a good thing I gave you the opportunity to bring them in first. But I mean, the reason they're on our lists is because these are all things that people raised with us as part of the survey and as part of the previous meeting we had. And yeah, particularly around repeat repairs. Obviously, I know people talked about earlier the average time that it takes to respond to a repair, which is great. But I think what we're also interested in is actually, like Councillor Symes says, those times when it doesn't go right and actually repairs drag on, and there might be numerous visits or numerous interactions that the tenant has to have with the service. So yeah, if I could ask people to kind of respond to that question about repeat repairs and how do you identify these kind of ongoing issues and address them. So again, we'll go around the same route we did first off. So if we could start with Avery, please.
Many thanks. Thanks, Councillor Symes, for the question. It is a really good one, actually, to be fair, because I think a lot of it is when we're dealing with, specifically in some block properties, you might have a leak, potentially, that might be coming through the ceiling, and if it's on the ground floor flat, it could be the result of more than one issue, and it could be related to residents living above it and showers or baths actually when they switch on and off as well, so it's gaining access into some of those properties, especially on the larger blocks actually that we manage. But one of the ways that we've introduced recently, and we're starting to actually get greater data on it, because this is very much data driven process, so what we are able to do is identify the top 10% of all our properties that have a property that's over and above what we would consider would be normal repairs. And so if we find some properties that are having 4 or 5 repairs over a period of 6 months, we were able to identify and hone in on those properties and identify, is it because it's repeat repair? Is it because it's the same boiler that breaks down? Is it because it's the door, or is there's an ongoing leak that hasn't actually been resolved as well? So very much we would actually use intelligence that we have around us to identify on some of the properties as well, related to if there's multiple repairs in an existing property, because it might not just be the same issue, it might be other issues that we're picking up, and it could be on the back of a recent void or a mutual exchange, in which case then we would then be saying, actually, why are we going into these properties 6 or 7 months later? So that might lead us to identifying gaps in our void process, so we actually could improve that as well. We take on very much it's a learning process, which we do. Regarding actually how we manage that going forward, we do have monthly meetings very much with our repairs team that feed back data related to multiple repairs in properties, because it might be component issues related to a specific boiler or a specific tap or some componentry that we're installing in some of our properties as repairs item very much on the van stock that we might find actually has a higher failure rate than other items as well. But the frustration piece, which you picked up very much, we will see that through dialogue with the resident typically as well, so we can identify that at the contact centre at a very early point, like, this is the third time the same thing's happened in the last 6 months, what's going on, why are you not fixing it once and for all? So again, we will very much look and feedback from that intelligence that we get from our call agents that's based on that process as well. But the way that we address it primarily, Councillor Symes, is very much through data. So it's a data-driven process. So we can generate data from all the repairs that we have that identify in specific areas where there are more than one repair that we're actually having to do or go out to visit to a property as well.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Ask the same question of Guinness, please.
Thank you. Once again, very similar to Colin, but to be more specific, I suppose, if we go out to carry out a repair, because we are a repair service, and that repair fails, then the next thing we would look at after that would be component replacement or direct replacement, because the more we go out to repair, the more we're spending on something that could directly be replaced. So we're just spending more money on something. It's not always possible. However, we are gaining greater control of our what we call our plan budgets and where money can be spent. So components such as doors, windows, bathrooms, kitchens, roofs, etc. As a repair service now, we are focusing in on that more, because what we don't want to be doing is going out, as you said, councillor Symes, 4 or 5 times to the same repair, when actually the most logical thing to do is invest in replacement, because it's not good for us, because whilst we're going out to that same repair, there's other customers waiting, and ultimately it's going to have a very negative impact on the customer with the issue. So if we can't repair it the first time, what we would do then is send a service manager out to assess, was the repair carried out correctly? Has it failed? If so, does it require replacement? If it requires replacement, that is what we would recommend.
Thank you very much. And last same question of Secretary, please, Adele.
Thank you, Councillor Symes, for the question. I've got to be honest, I don't know how it works internally at the moment, so I'm not within the repair service. I imagine, but I don't know for certain, that when we go out and do a repair, we're actually doing an assessment of what's the right course of action to take. Is it to replace it or to repair it? What I do know that as an organisation, we're introducing, or we're currently building, a new software called One Property, where what we're actually doing is bringing together all information about properties onto one system. So at the moment, whilst we've got all the software in place, we're trying to bring our reinvestment, so planned works, improvements that we've done, but also our repairs information. And the intention of that, when it does get introduced, is that when an operative attends, they'll actually be able to see all of the history for that specific property, to be able to learn what's happened previously, and that will empower them to be able to make the right decision in terms of what the best stages for the customer. So if they've been out to do a repair for a boiler, say 3 times in the last 6 months, being able to access all of that information on the visit, they'll be able to see that, to say, actually, this is not value for money to replace it, and it's not good customer service. So that's the intention of the organisation at the moment, that we're introducing this new software to bring all of that information together. I'm sorry I can't give a more detailed answer. I apologise for that.
Thank you very much. And PCC.
Yeah, so again, very similar to the previous. Certainly in terms of, as I talked about before, about the complaints process, that would always be one of the management team would go out to that who's not connected to the original issues, and that would be an opportunity to sort of reflect and learn from that complaint, and make sure that we're doing something different and not just doing the same thing. I think data, as was mentioned, is key, and certainly we keep a whole host of data on repair history and where we're spending the money and where the visits are, and we can learn from that. And I think the other aspect of that we've been taking on as well is it's not just about where we're doing the most visits. Sometimes it's those properties that we don't have any repair calls for. Sometimes they're the ones that are maybe in that need repairs, but the resident hasn't phoned those through. So we're also doing it where we sort of target some of the stock surveys that we do that are quite targeted, and it may be it's areas where there has been a lot of repairs in a certain area, because it might be in certain blocks, certain property types, but also where we haven't had lots of repairs, we will also target some of those areas to make sure that we're doing a survey and we're making sure that the property is being maintained correctly. And obviously, you know, we also try to empower our tradesmen when they're going in. One of the questions they will ask is there any other repairs? And also they are technical people that are going into properties, and we are looking at working with our contractors to utilise those visits in any property. So they may be going in to do a servicing, but actually they have got responsibility to sort of raise with us if there's any other sort of issues that they see that they can raise back to us.
Thank you very much, Steve. Okay, right, we've done the round robin there. I'm going to pick up on something that was mentioned earlier. It's not something that came out of the resident engagement we did, perhaps unsurprisingly, but it's something I think all landlords, all social landlords here today have mentioned, issues around kind of recruitment and workforce issues. And I just wonder, obviously everyone is doing their own kind of recruitment and retention initiative within their organisation, but I'm also aware that everyone here is operating within the same area, i.e. Portsmouth, trying to recruit the same pool of workers, and obviously there is going to be necessarily a competitive element to that. Obviously, I mean, Abbury would try and recruit the same person that Guinness are trying to recruit, for example. I guess the question I'd like to put to you is, as well as that competitive recruitment process, do you think there are any opportunities for kind of collaboration and working together in terms of maybe retraining or upskilling the local workforce so that there's a wider pool of people available in order to fill these positions? I know it's a slightly left field question, but I thought it might just be worth something asking and seeing. That there may well be work already ongoing, I don't know, but has anyone got any views on that? Start with Abbury. I see Ralph nodding, so I'll let him jump in.
Thanks, Councillor. Really good question. Employment is a pivotal part of our offer, and our view is that we want people to be actively employed but feel a part of a great organisation. If people join as a tradesperson and go on for careers either in our organisation or elsewhere, we see that as a really good thing. I started my career as a housing officer in Portsmouth City Council. I learnt a lot and went on and worked elsewhere and used the skills and abilities over my career. And we want to do the same. So Colin talked about the recruitment fairs that we've been running. And one of the best days I had in the last few months is when Colin and I sat in a hotel I won't name in Portsmouth as people came in, and then we had gas engineers, electricians, and people would be assessed, meet people doing a similar role, and would hopefully sign up. And I think on the day Colin 8 did, which was brilliant. And those are families in Portsmouth who will be part of obviously our organisation. But there's a skill in in their trades can develop into other areas. So next year we have 47 roles in our budget for apprenticeships, and we're putting substantial resources into recruiting in our local areas, and particularly around emerging technologies such as electrical and EV electricians and green retrofit engineers, which all our organisations will need for the future. I think there's more. It's a fair challenge. We're all individual organisations, but there's more we can do to share information. So if we've recruited our gas engineers and people come forward and we don't have a role, we can signpost. And I think it's a fair challenge that we can share that experience, maybe share the overhead of some of shared recruitment fairs, things that we can certainly think about. Certainly for next year, though, we're investing resources locally, and we want people to have a career in housing and a career in our trades teams and go on to whatever that career will ultimately lead to, because I think it has a lot to offer our local economy as well as the city.
Thank you very much, Ralph. I won't go around to everyone on this one because I know it's slightly kind of, like I said, a left field question, so I don't want to pick too much on the spot. But if anyone from Guinness or Sanctuary does want to come in, then
yeah, please, could I add to that? I mean, it's very difficult. If you look at the national statistics, if you've got a list of trade jobs currently, so if there's 100 jobs, there's 5 people to fill them or 10 people to fill them. It's a very, very tough marketplace. Like Ralph and Abbury, I think one thing we need to focus on is if you look at the demographics and the age groups of people coming into trades, there's a big gap at the moment. So from Guinness's perspective, what we're doing is looking to go into colleges and schools and promote apprenticeships to sort of fill that gap, because there was a big period where the construction industry slowed down dramatically, people retrained. Even during COVID, we've noticed a lot of people move away from trade-based jobs. So we need to go back to what we call our ground roots and look at people coming through to colleges, leaving school, what apprenticeships we can offer, and to a certain extent grow your own. Because if we can get these individuals in, we can work with them, develop the right values and behaviours for our organisations, so they become ambassadors for each organisation. And I know it's something that Abbury focuses on, and it's something that Guinness will as well.
Thank you very much. Steve?
Yeah, just really to echo those comments, but certainly in Portsmouth, certainly our service providers invest heavily in the local area. So I think in the high 90s, people live within 10 miles and certainly within the PO postcodes, and they do a huge amount of work in terms of work experience. I know we had some contractors come to a social value event, and social value is increasingly more important for us about what contractors can offer, and you know, they gave good examples of where they're regularly taking school students in on work experience, and it is very positive. And I think that is definitely the, you know, we have to get in as early as we can to encourage people that actually there is careers in construction, in repairs, in this industry, because, you know, we do need to grow our own, and certainly for us as well, even from a surveyor point of view, we are regularly taking on 2 or 3 apprentices a year, and putting them through an apprenticeship degree, and we are, you know, we're developing our own chartered building surveyors, which, you know, 10, 15 years ago was unheard of, but we would never attract chartered building surveyors, but now we are growing our own, and we've probably got the strongest surveying team that we've had in a number of years. And again, that's similar for the contractors. They recognise in this very competitive market, you know, it is doing the work experience, it is doing getting people in at an early stage for apprenticeships, and apprenticeships are very key to their business, and I think that's the bit. I think that you know, we've seen those apprentices go right the way through to be tradesmen. There's examples in our service providers where those are the same people that are supervisors, and without a doubt, you get a bit more loyalty if you've got those local people that you've developed and you've brought them all the way through. And that is definitely a strength. I think that the question that you did ask, though, Councillor, was do we share and work together? That's probably an area where we probably need to perhaps, you know, it's interesting on the call seeing all these people in exactly the same situations, same issues, and we have got the same sort of issues, and maybe there is some mileage in that we need to probably talk a bit more amongst ourselves, that we are sort of sharing our experiences and learning from each other in some of those areas.
Brilliant. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, absolutely. And I think obviously there's currently issues with kind of workforce and recruitment, but I'm also mindful that the skill set that we're going to need in the years to come is actually probably going to change quite a lot. I mean, one of the things we haven't really talked about today is probably kind of outside of our remit, but it's worth mentioning on briefly, is kind of the massive retrofit works that all social landlords are going to need to be engaging in the years to come, kind of hundreds of millions probably in Portsmouth alone. So there's going to be this whole new market, this whole new labour market, and we probably also need to start thinking about how we're going to ensure that people have the skills and the training that are needed in order to engage in that. Okay, brilliant, thank you. Councillor Brown, have you got anything else you'd like to touch on at this point?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I wanted to ask a quick question around supply chain issues. So obviously we know about the rising cost of materials. I was just wanted to ask the landlords present what sort of impact those supply chain issues, rising cost of materials, rising cost of labour is having. What sort of things can be done to mitigate it? What sort of things are being done to mitigate it? And how does it compare to where we were, say, pre-pandemic or pre-Brexit, before the issues from those started impacting it? What's the comparative landscape from the last time it was in a good place, and how is it now?
Thank you. So again, we'll start off with Avery, please.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Brown. We've actually been quite in a unique position, I would suspect, actually, from regards to Avery, because we've recently just completed our procurement exercise, where we previously had at least 8 or 9 individual suppliers, material suppliers. We've consolidated that down now to 3, which is primarily on the building trade side. So we've got one provider there. We also have one specifically for electrical and one for gas. And the benefit of doing that, and actually leveraging the benefits actually of reducing or consolidating our supply chain, has enabled us to primarily actually increase the benefits of leveraging our cost. So we actually will reduce the cost base. which is in spite of the increase in prices going up. Ours, we've actually seen we've made savings up to £1 million, actually, to be fair, over 1 year. So we're quite comfortable with regard to the approach that we took regarding that. The other benefit we found also with that is the enhanced social value that some of these providers are able to offer us now, because we're spending more money with them, typically over £4 or £5 million as well on one particular provider. So therefore, we have, again, we can realise greater savings or greater benefits through social value and community investment, which a lot of them are starting to do now as well. We've absolutely baked that into the contracts. So very much we've got KPIs and measures to say, you said you'll provide 10 apprentices in a particular area, where is it? You said you're going to invest X amount in community areas and in state improvements, where is it? So we've actually baked that into our procurement exercise, which we've done in the tendering one. So for us, actually, it's been quite good. But going back to the other point, I think we absolutely, without a doubt, all housing associations and landlords would have actually experienced the issues related to material supplies, which was primarily on gyprock, plaster, concrete, wood, timber. Now it's timber, obviously, because of the storms, but it will be timber. So we are experiencing those issues, and we went through that. And again, that's led, which we've mentioned earlier in this discussion, that's led to a lot of the backlogs we've experienced in a lot of the repair scenario, because we just haven't been able to get hold of materials. We're starting to see that situation ease now, councillor. So very much where materials are a bit more accessible and available. But prices have hiked up by about 15 to 20% in some aspects. And again, that cost has actually been followed in with other aspects which we're trying to do. So we felt it timely to address or meet the challenge of increased stock levels by revisiting our supply chain. And that's why we did the procurement exercise, actually, regarding obviously when it was tendered externally. Other benefits we found also is, again, whilst we'd very much like to repair some aspects as well, this goes back again to the planned discussion that I raised earlier. If we can do and carry out works on a planned process, it's a lot more significantly cheaper. And obviously you can buy leverage again because you're buying on greater volume. So replacing whole windows rather than just continually repairing windows. So we actually replace it on one whole large scale. So again, there are some opportunities that we can do that by actually getting quite cuter with actually how we manage our planned works investment as well as part of that.
Thank you very much. And if we could ask the same question of Guinness, please.
Yeah, in simple terms, I think we've seen an overall increase of around about 15% across the board on the services we provide. Once we've made changes to the way we deliver, we restructure, we look at our productivity levels, we do some retendering, procure new contracts. Overall, the additional cost for this coming year is an additional 9% on the services we're providing. That's across the board. But as an organisation, we're experiencing the same issues as Colin from Abbury, Portsmouth City. We're all in the same boat. It's a bit disappointing sometimes that we're all competing for the same person when we're going out, because we all provide very good terms and conditions and a good place to work. But I know for a fact one of my electricians went to Abbury a few months ago, and I'm sure I'll have somebody from Abbury at some point, or from a contractor that has works for Portsmouth City Council. It's just the way things are at the moment. But overall, I'd say around about 15% is the cost increase. But to Guinness, once we've washed that through and made our changes, overall it was a 9% increase for this coming year.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. And Sanctuary, Adele.
I'm going to apologise again, Councillor Brown. I don't have the statistics that my colleagues have got on this situation because I don't deal with the repair service directly. I'm aware that we do have a national framework of material suppliers. Anecdotally, I know that when I speak to customers, that there have been delays in sourcing these materials. I don't have any idea of what the increase of cost would be, I'm afraid. So I feel a bit ill-equipped to answer that question.
Nice, thank you, Adele. And PCC.
Yeah, but again, similar. I think the biggest impact that we can do very little about is the cost increase. It is a cost reimbursable contract, so we are paying that cost. Very similar figures to what were quoted before. I think we've talked about between 10 and 15% across the board, but some of those are massively more than that in certain particular areas. In terms of the impact on the service from a supply point of view, I think what our service providers have definitely found beneficial, it's about data again. It is about understanding what are the key items that you're using, and making sure that you have got the right stocks, and you know, whether that's van stock, whether that's in warehouses, working with their supply chain. It is about very key knowing exactly what is the usage of particular items, and if there are delays, it's making sure that they get those stocks in time, so that it doesn't actually impact on the service. So I think that they've minimised the impact, but I would say there's a lot more work from the materials management side of the contractors to make sure that has as little impact as possible on the service.
Steve, Merida?
Yeah, I'm not going to add any more to the guys that have already spoken, Cal, but because we're in exactly the same position. I think one of the things, just listening to the conversations we've had, I think one of the key actions that we could take out, and I know you'll cover this, but I just wanted to get it off my chest now. One of the key things we could take forward as a collective here is that at PCC we engage with 3 different contractors, and we have a core group. And we meet on a regular basis to discuss the strategic issues, which includes about pay, etc. Because we don't want people leaving between our own contractors, let alone going to people like Abry or Guinness, etc. But I think one of the things that we can do, perhaps as a collective here, is set something in stone that we meet. People like Colin, people like Andrew, Steve, Ralph, myself, etc. on a regular basis to discuss some of these issues going forward, and perhaps as a collective we can start setting some, almost like Portsmouth levels. I know it might be difficult to hold, etc. But I know that we're experiencing problems because there's a large authority down the road that begins with an S who are trying to recruit for electricians at the moment, and I think all of us are going to face issues because they're going to blow our salaries that we're paying our own electricians out of the water, etc. So I think there's a number of issues that we can discuss and be good, perhaps as a core group of collective like minds, discussing some of those issues and picking up things around the green agenda going forward, resources that we can develop around that, but also some of the pilot work that we've got planned in our programs for next year, that we can share that knowledge with Abry and Guinness and other social landlords, etc. And perhaps utilise some of the, because I've got a large technical team working for me, perhaps bigger than Colin has and Andrew, etc. And perhaps we can share some of the workings that we've done, that we can share that knowledge locally as well. We've got an in-house energy team that's bringing in a lot of government funding, etc. And that would be good to share that knowledge, but share some of that funding with the guys as well. So I apologise for just almost like hijacking Councillor Brown's question, but I thought I just wanted to perhaps get that noted so that perhaps we could take that forward in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. Sounds like you're writing our recommendations for us already, which is helpful. Okay. So moving on, before we ask everyone, now round we have Councillor Symes. Is there an additional question you'd like to ask?
No, thank you.
Okay. So I think we've covered a lot of the big picture general issues that have been raised with us. I will now take this opportunity to ask a question about a specific block and the specific landlords, because this is something that was brought up very strongly in the resident engagement we did. So apologies in advance for putting you on the spot, but it is to do with a sanctuary block, Adele, and hopefully you've had some knowledge of this today, and it's around Crab Court in Somerstown. So when we invited residents along, quite a significant number of them came, particularly from Crab Court, from a number of different households, and they were telling the same story, really, of quite significant dissatisfaction with the service they were receiving. Some of it was around housing management. Actually, the vast majority of it was around the repairs service in particular. And in particular, looking at my notes, a lot of it was around the length of time that it was taking for repairs to be undertaken. And as I say, this was different households, different people, but telling the same story over a number of years. So I wondered if you could perhaps comment on that, of any knowledge you have of what the issues have been and what work is perhaps being done to try and address this. I mean, just a very specific point that was made, I think, a number of times, was concerns around the availability of local workforce or contractors to do works, whether or not that's an issue at play here. It'd be useful to kind of hear your feedback really and your commentary on that, seeing as it was raised with us quite strongly.
I will try my best. However, whether that's good enough, I'll see. We don't. I mean, we do have our direct workforce, but they cover an area. So, like I said to start with, we only have 129 properties in Portsmouth. So the team that do our day-to-day repairs cover a much larger area than that. So they will cover Hampshire, they will cover Dorset, they will cover parts of Wiltshire as well. So I take on board that the workforce may not be considered as local because they cover a wider geographical area than Portsmouth alone, unfortunately. Is there any specifics? I mean, I know we've had some concerns raised at Crab Court, and the ones that were raised to me I have looked into and I have commented on, and I think they've gone through to I think one went through to Stephen Morgan. So I know there's been various issues that have been raised that we have looked into. When I reviewed the information, I didn't feel as if there'd been a failure of service, but I will absolutely, if there's any other information that I haven't been made aware of, I would like to be able to be given the opportunity to look into that in more detail. So one of the examples that I was given was that someone was out without toilet facilities for a period of time. And when we looked into that query, when the customer rang us, what the customer told us is it was the downstairs toilets, but they said their upstairs toilet was working properly. It was during a lockdown, so we didn't deem it as an emergency repair. And I'm not trying to defend our position, but when I reviewed it, it felt as if we took the right action at the time, unless there's other mitigating factors that I'm not aware of.
Okay, thanks, Adele. Yeah, I mean, just I guess I'll let Councillor Brown a couple of times come in if there's anything additional I have to say, but I think there was at least 5 different households present, and obviously there's not a massive amount of properties there. There's only kind of a couple of dozen, I'd imagine, at most. So it's quite a significant number of the residents present, and they, as I say, they all gave a similar story about their experience of the repair service in particular. And yeah, I think each of them, from my notes, referenced the period of time that they felt it took to get issues resolved. And some of that was about initial appointments, and I think some of it was about repeat repairs, kind of ongoing for long periods of time. So it did just strike us that there was a particular strength of feeling within that specific block that suggested there was a general issue to be flagged up. But I'll just pause there and let Councillor Brown or Councillor Symes come in if there's anything additional they wish to add from their recollection of the discussions. Councillor Brown?
Yeah, so certainly there was a lot of passion from the residents there that they felt that they hadn't received the level of service they would expect from their landlord. There was a sort of an ongoing theme, particularly around the early days of the pandemic, where an issue was raised and then I think from their point of view, they might have felt that the pandemic was being used as an excuse to delay repairs. Whether that is the actual case or not, I'm not going to try and presuppose or not. There was a couple of people who mentioned issues like having no heating or no hot water and being told to go and use the shower upstairs instead. So I think they might have felt that they had received a poor level of customer service. Again, I'm just trying to reconvey what other people have said rather than jumping on my own. Councillor Symes, was there anything that you recall as well?
Yes, I think it was more to do with the bathroom issue you were talking about. As I recall, one of the residents there said they had to use a neighbour's facilities for some time until a repair was carried out. So, I mean, I don't know if that relates to the same issue in the same flat or a different one, but I think they felt there had been some real breakdown in communication with Sanctuary, and they felt that even when they tried to make appointments for people to come along, they either didn't turn up or the appointment was cancelled and rearranged for another time. So I think that they felt really a bit beleaguered because their issues were ongoing, far more so than just one-off repairs, and it never seemed that the issue had been properly addressed. That was the impression I got anyway.
Yeah, thank you both. I think that's probably a fair representation of the feedback we had, and I appreciate it's not going to be appropriate here to go into kind of individual details and cases, but we did just want to raise the general issue because of the kind of the strength of feeling, and the people had asked us to do that. I will let you come back in, Adele, but I will also maybe take the opportunity just to suggest a way forward is that perhaps we can kind of with yourselves and someone else as appropriate from Sanctuary, if appropriate, maybe take this offline with the residents, because I think part of the concern had been that they felt that they hadn't necessarily been listened to. So maybe a role that we can try and help play is to try and kind of facilitate that communication and engagement and ensure that where there are issues outstanding, they are being dealt with appropriately. So if people are happy with that as a way forwards, then that's what I will suggest. I know you put your hand back down. Are you happy with that? Or is there anything you wish to come back in on?
I'm more than happy with that, and I think in addition to that, what I am going to do is do a separate exercise of reviewing repairs since lockdown at that particular property, so that I've got a slightly different view as well. But absolutely, I'd like to understand from our customers, if they're not happy with our service, I need to know that to be able to try and respond and improve those services. So thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've naturally moved towards a conclusion. Councillor Brown and Symes, is there anything else you wish to ask of people or comment upon before we draw the meeting to a close? Start with Councillor Brown.
No other questions from me. Just to thank everyone for coming and thank you for all the information you've given us today.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Symes.
Yeah, I think it's been very successful, and I think it's great that Sanctuary are prepared to come and have a separate meeting, because that way we can try and resolve some of those issues and ensure they don't happen in the future. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so is there anything else that anyone else wishes to contribute just before we move to an end? No, okay. In that case, I will draw the meeting to a close. Just to say, kind of by way of conclusion, thank you all, obviously, for giving up some of your kind of busy work schedules, I'm sure, to come along and participate. We do think it's important that us as elected councillors and those that we represent have the opportunity to have these discussions and pick up on particular issues that affect people. Obviously, if you're living in social housing, actually your kind of day-to-day engagement with the repairs and maintenance service can be something that has a major impact over your life. So I think it's important that all of us work together and remain committed to kind of driving up standards across the board, sharing best practice and ensuring that we're all doing what we can to ensure that everyone has a decent home to live in. Because something that I know that I'm particularly passionate about, and I'm sure that everyone on the call is that it shouldn't matter whether you live in social housing or private rented, or if you're a homeowner, whatever your tenure, wherever you live, you deserve a decent and a safe place to live. And that's something that I know we are all committed to, and we need to continue working together on. So out of the back of this discussion and the previous survey and meeting we've had with residents, we will work together to kind of draw up a kind of summary report with a series of recommendations. I think some of those recommendations have started to be teased out already, and I know Meredith has given us one already, which is a good start. But I think, yeah, we'll also kind of look at the other information we have and draw that together so that we've got an end product, which will then be published, I think, towards the end of the month. And I'm sure we can circulate that to you all so that you can have a little read through. So we will end it there. Again, thank you all very much for participating, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks again, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.